Hey guys, we're back in the workshop, and today I don't have actually a special project because I am in a quite time rush, but I have a lot of knives to finish for two knife shows that are coming up, so I thought why not just take you along. So the knives that I want to work on this week is the Indomitor Shadow, the Companion, which is a really old model but still one of my favorite knives, and the new Creed model, which I also want to finish up this week. The first step is going to be I'm going to clean up all the corners on the Shadow model because I want to round off the edges of this knife because it won't get any kind of handle scale, so I want to have it nice and smooth and rounded. And if you're interested in how I built the Shadow, I've also made a full video about it where you can see all the specific steps. Alright guys, so now the knives are ready to be ground, the holes are drilled, the edges are rounded, and I've also scribed some center lines. So in this video today you will see a lot of footages which is sped up because I'm working on a lot of knives, and I've even added more knives than I said in the intro because I wanted to finish a lot of smaller EDC knives than I actually planned out to do. And you may going to ask, why did I choose to make even more knives than I planned out to do? And the reason behind that is I was at a knife show on a Sunday and I started filming that video on the Saturday beforehand, and a lot of people were looking out for smaller EDC knives, and I had just a lot of bigger knives on my table, and therefore I wanted to make even more knives because I'm going to a big knife show in this coming week, and therefore I decided to make even more smaller EDC knives. I've got now a lot of knives pre-heat treatment, ground, and now I can start working on the heat treatment. Because this is stainless steel, I have to wrap them into stainless steel foil or heat treating foil to protect those knives from the hot environment. Is wrapping up knives into stainless steel pouches fun? No, and I'm not going to bore you with all that kind of footage, just a couple of knives here into that stainless steel foil and how I do it. But it's not a fun task to do, but you have to do it if you want to get nice results in the end. And here you can see me plate quenching the knives between two aluminum plates, and I'm also using some compressed air to cool them down quicker, and that also helps me to keep the knives as straight as possible and have a really nice hard knife in the end. The knives are now heat treated, so I have to jump now to my grinding room and finish up the grind. So you will see just a couple of minutes of me finish grinding those knives, but this is actually taking quite a long time because you want to get good grinds. You want to thin out those knives really nicely so they cut nicely, especially for EDC knives where you're not going to go through a lot of wood. You want to cut cardboard and all that kind of stuff. So I thinned them down quite a lot, and you have to be careful. Cool down your knives using fresh belts. And here you can see a lot of sped up footage for me from just grinding and not just close-up footage. took actually quite a while to finish, but all the knives are now finished ground, so now I can start working on the handles. So I'm cutting out my G10 on a metal cutting bandsaw. I'm actually using the Milwaukee portable bandsaw clamped into my vise, and those metal cutting blades, they are holding up much better to the roughness or toughness of the G10 actually, instead of a wood cutting blade. Now that the handle scales are cut out, I can start drilling out the holes so I can set up those screws for the knives, and I'm always using clamps to hold the scales and the knife together so I can drill through the holes that I've already drilled into the knives. So this footage of me profiling the handle scales is actually 20 times faster than a normal speed. I wish I could work that fast, and it's just, sometimes it takes quite a long time to just grind so many handle scales at the same time, even though you're cutting down on time because you're working on so many steps and you don't have to set up each machine for just maybe a couple of knives. So I have to just set up the machine for 20 knives and then get everything done. So now I'm going to start working on the rock pattern of those knives, and I'm making 25 knives, but 20 of them are getting handle scales. So that is 40 scales for each knife because I'm working in pairs here. So I had to grind at first 40 of them by itself and then screw it to these knives to finish them up. So I've got a question in my comments from someone, and he was asking why I'm grinding the handle scales by itself and then later on I'm going to attach them to the knife. And for me, it's just, I think, a preference. You can also screw them straight to the knife and shape everything on the knife by itself, but I think it's just nicer, and you can get into some areas, especially on the front of the knife, when the knife is not attached or the handle scales are not attached to the knife right away. And here I had to hype myself up because I was just grinding and grinding and grinding on handle scales, and I was getting tired, and my body and the body posture that you can see here is not really healthy for my body. My back was aching, but I just had to push through it and just finish up those knives, and I was looking forward to finish up all those knives, and I just was hyped up, so I wanted to get everything done. Another great benefit is when you're working on so many knives at the same time, you are using less material. For example, I noticed that I just had to use 120 grit ceramic belt for these 20 knives, and normally in 1 week I'm working at around 10 to 15 knives, and this week I finished up 20 knives with handle scales, and I just had to use that one belt, and ceramic belts are quite expensive. So if you're not a full-time knife maker, so maybe sometimes it's good to work on a lot of knives at the same time so you don't waste that much material. Now I'm at the last stages of finishing up the rock pattern on those knives, because I just have to finish up the rock pattern on the steel and feather everything in. And I was so happy when I had everything done and the rock pattern was done and my body was also done after that portion of work. I have now sandblasted all of the knives and now I can finally apply the Stonewash finish to them. So if you're interested in how to apply Stonewash finish, I've already made a full dedicated video on how to make a Stonewash finish. And when the Stonewash finish is done, I can finally sharpen up those knives, and I'm using the Tormek T4, and I actually have a lot of Tormeks in my workshop. But for these knives, because the edges were ground so thinly, I just had to use that 400 grit stone, and then I'm changing out to a 1200 grit stone, and after that I just had to strop them over a leather with some polishing compound on them to get them to a razor sharp finish. Now that the knives are sharp, I can start working on the Kydex sheaths, and this is also going to be the last step of finishing up these 25 knives. Kydex sheaths are also done now, and now the knives are finished, and I think I have finished up around 25 to 30 knives, because I've also finished up some hydras which were already ground and heat treated. They just needed their finish and their sheaths. This is it now for this video. I hope you still enjoyed this video, even though it wasn't a special project. If you guys got any kind of questions, just drop them down below into the comments. Hit that subscribe button if you want to see more content like that. Hit that like button if you liked that video, and we'll see us next Friday.